Greetings, my dear friends. Today, I have with me a very eminent personality, a personality whose name is General Bakshi. Now, before I get on to General Bakshi, what we need to understand is very rarely in the Indian Armed Forces and in India, there have been decisions, especially with respect to recruitment, that have been contentious. For a very long time, the Indian Armed Forces recruited personnel for an initial engagement of 15 years as far as the NCO or the non-commissioned officer rank was concerned. After they basically came in because they found a permanent job for 15 years and thereafter, most importantly, pension and medical facilities, among the host of other facilities. On the 12th of June 2022, this changed. This changed because a scheme called the Agnipath was introduced for the recruitment of personnel in the NCO rank in India. This scheme would involve a creation of a new rank of people called the Agniveers. This brought in a major change as far as recruitment was concerned, and it resulted in large-scale protests, rioting, arson. It inflamed passions, both political and otherwise, across the nation. Rarely there has been such a scheme that came into the Indian Armed Forces or with respect to the armed forces that divided people. Divided not just the civilian population, but also the retired armed forces community, both officers and men. Let's try in the next 30 minutes or so, examine this scheme, understand it, what were its basic objectives, how this was supposed to be implemented, and more importantly, understand, was there a precedence? Is it something which was evolved out of nothing, or did it come with some substance in mind? And like I said, it is now time to bring in General Bakshi. General Bakshi will help me navigate these tricky waters, these very confined waters in the typical parlance of the Indian Navy, and will give us not just the historical perspective, but also a very modern employability perspective of the Agniveers. He is eminently qualified. Hey, why am I introducing him? Sir, would you like to introduce yourself?
Thank you, Sudarshan. Firstly, thank you for calling me. Great pleasure to be with you.
Honor, sir, is mine.
When to introduce myself, the one thing I can claim without any hesitation is that possibly I'm one of the older guys still going around. Other qualifications I will not vouch for. That people have to make up their own mind. I joined the National Defence Academy at Clementown in January 53 and got commissioned in December 56 into Command Regiment of the Infantry of the Indian Army. Thereafter, having served 3 battalions of the Command Regiment, I was transferred to Jack Rifles, Jammu and Kashmir Rifles, wherein again I was part of 2 battalions, including commanding one on the Indo-China border in Sikkim high altitude. Operationally, I took part in 65 operations, and of course in 71 I was facing the Chinese in Sikkim as I just mentioned. Thereafter, I commanded the regimental center, which did the bulk of recruiting at that point of time for those particularly who were ex-servicemen and had their children wanting to join the army. After I of course commanded a brigade and a division in Arunachal Pradesh when Sundurong incident had taken place. And thereafter I did DG Infantry, which again has the total task of keeping a watch on the entire infantry recruitment. And I retired in 94 after 38 years, over 38 years service, with tremendous happiness and I would say satisfaction, having led a very interesting and exciting life. Having said so, I also did an appointment called ADGPS in Army Headquarters as Major General for a year and a half, which had the task of dealing with pay, pension and policy matters of Sipahi to Field Marshal. Field Marshals having come in just about that time. So I do claim that I have dealt with this subject quite a lot. Studied the foreign armies also, what they do. Also being Major General at that time, the other two services, Navy and Air Force, had 1 lakh lower heads in this personal branch. So I had the task of coordinating the tri-service initiatives in this regard. So if I may say so, one is very happy to talk about the subject and I will honestly and truthfully, without any constraint, put forward my views, whatever they be worth.
Perfect, sir. In fact, my dear friends, what is not being said is the fact that General Bakshi has personally been involved not just while he was in the Indian Army, even thereafter in multiple activities, multiple ways by which he has remained in touch with the policymakers and the fact that he has handled the recruitment across domain, across requirements. But let's now quickly get on to the Agnipath scheme itself. Like I mentioned, the Agnipath scheme is limited to recruitment of personnel only at the NCO and equivalent cadre. All other recruitments, like the direct JCO, continue without any changes. Personnel here would be recruited for an initial period of 4 years, during which they will be paid for salaries of 25,000 in the first year, rising up to 40,000 rupees in the last year. On completion of their engagement period, while they get 12 lakh and something based on whatever they have saved and otherwise, their total package would be approximately 22 lakhs. Right? A new rank called the Agniveer was created and all the Agniveers would be governed under the respective Army, Navy or the Air Force Act. On completion of 4 years, 25% of these personnel would be laterally moved into or inducted into the Army, Navy or Air Force. 75% will get released. They will get a skills certificate from the Government of India and, like I mentioned, a lump sum of a little over 22 lakhs. They will be eligible for lateral absorption into the CRPF, paramilitary, central and state governments, police, as well as many a private sector company has said that they would be creating provisions for recruitment of the Agniveers. The recruitment would be a 3-stage process. The first stage, as on date now, will be a written exam, online written exam that ensures the quality of the recruits. It is important that this part be highlighted for one major reason, and that the army is changing. From what it used to be at the time we got our independence to where we are today, if the world has changed, so has the army. That has to change, and quality is an important aspect. The second would be the phase is the physical examination or physical fitness as would be brought out in the respective rallies. The idea here is while you do not dilute the physical requirements, but you reduce the number of people that come to the rallies and avoid overcrowding. A medical examination will follow, and finally a merit list based on performance and the vacancies. Like I said, there has been a lot of, well, to say the least, furore over this entire process. Among the reasons why people shouted or screamed or raved and ranted was 15 years pehle hota tha, ab only 4 years. But sir, tell me, was it really like this throughout as far as we are concerned? Because what I hear, what I have seen is only 15 years of engagement in the initial phase. How do you remember it, sir?
Well, Sudarshan, before I start on this, I would like to state that decisions are made on various matters in any country, in any organization, in any institution, even in our homes, considering a lot of parameters. Let us not presume that such serious decision will be made as a sudden brain wave or as a whim or as a fancy. No, it doesn't happen that way. That is my belief. Let us also believe that the people who are wearing uniform and working today are no less than what we were when we were working.
Absolutely.
They are as capable, as competent, as honest, as forthright, as pressing as maybe we were. Because I am saying all this because the reason is there is a tendency today to be judgmental and consider as if a decision has been made without due consideration. Very incorrect. Let us also accept that a forum where the decision being made would have had number of parameters and contradictory requirements to be met. So as a necessity, they have had to compromise on some issues. The compromise they have done, let us believe that they would have done with the best interest of the country in mind.
Absolutely, sir.
Not to believe this is incorrect and totally erroneous. That is my view. Unfortunately, we who have shed uniform, some of us at least, are rather too critical of decisions without having an access to the parameters that were there and in detail, in quantity, in quality. Why I am saying this to you is that a lot of people say budget doesn't matter, find the money. That is one question. Let me state to you, I am saying this because I have served in this army at a time when it was working on a model 7 years color service and 8 years reserve, and doing so since 1930. And after that, there were 2 world wars. There were the J&K operations. There were the 62 operations, the 65 operations, the 71 operations. And it was only 76 that this 15 years came into being, because at that time, the then Chief, General Raina, whom I knew very well, he was my CO, and I was his IO in the battalion way back. He prevailed upon the government that they can't find a job and they have commitment and therefore they need this support. The support was given at that time. But unfortunately, it was unsustainable, particularly after the war opening. It's a fact. And I know it because the calculation, the pension bill of the armed forces went up 3 times in a period of just 8 years. And mind you, let me put it this way to you, it's easier to talk. Don't we do so at our homes? Doesn't a company also balance its budget? You can't do things without keeping everything in mind. There are other requirements, but nevertheless, I am not going to be speaking in favor of this thing. But I know one thing, that it is not something out of the blue. It did exist, and there was a requirement to do something. And if you will all recall, and it's a pertinent point to remember, in 2004 January, a government pension was done away for everybody other than the armed forces.
That's correct.
A new scheme which is prevalent in the world over. The world has this kind of scheme for all their government employees, where certain contributions are made by the government and certain by the individuals on their salary. And then the social security post-retirement is given to them. Same kind of scheme was made and introduced. It went on till, of course, politics took over, which has happened recently, where a culture of freebies and also whatever, where you can please a voter, do it.
So let's not go into the politics of that part. However, let me just quickly summarize what you said.
Yeah.
What you said, sir, if I understood you correctly, that this 4-year scheme or color service scheme or Agniveer scheme is not new. It was in existence from 1930 onwards and was there till 1976. Under this scheme, India has fought World War II. It has also got its independence, the 48 operations, the 62 war, the Goa operations that happened, also the 65 and the 71 wars. And there was no trouble as such. Therefore, this scheme in that sense is not new. Nothing extraordinary has happened. Right, sir? There is always this problem that keeps coming up, and people keep saying that, hey, all this is going to do something wrong as far as the glory of the battalion, the namak, nishan, as far as the loyalty to the troops and all that is concerned. This will affect. Is that really true, sir?
Very, very good point you raised, Sudarshan. Let me give you my own experience. In 65 operations I took part. I was company commander. When the operations are imminent or when they start, it's normal to cut short the training period of the trainees and send the batches to the battalions post haste, because you need to make up manpower. This happened. And my experience as a company commander was that these lads who came in, they were not one bit less than others who were there before. Therefore, I am totally of the view, let us not view our people, when they don't do the work, they do committedly, dedicatedly, and you can trust them. And because our system of selection is such, that is no problem, and our ethos in the family are such that we readily give our loyalty and commitment and keep barring an odd exception.
That's true, sir.
So therefore, my own view is, all this talk that because of short period this will happen, I do not believe it. Because I have myself seen these boys, in fact, some are better than the others. That is one part. And second, I want to say one part. It's a normal thing to say that what would you prefer, an army led by tigers, the army of sheep led by tigers, or vice versa, led by sheep, an army of tigers. Obviously, we want the tigers to be leading an army. And if that is the case, then let me show you, in the first model, 7 years color and 8 years reserve, entire leadership, right from the lowest unit, that is the sub-unit, a section, right up to the officers, was permanent and pension earning. Likewise, in this scheme also, everybody will be pension earning, because in 25% you can have your section commander upwards everybody. So leadership is not affected. An army in which the leadership is totally permanent and committed and selected, or armed force I should say, I think you can be rest assured nothing can go wrong. Therefore, I think the kind of doubts we have, some of us have, they're merely because nobody wants to lose a benefit which has been given. A benefit of pension was given, so it is sad and hurtful that we are losing it. That's all. No more.
Right, sir. So, if I have understood you correctly, as far as leadership is concerned, right at the bottommost level of leadership, which is the section level, whether it is in the new scheme now with the Agnipath and Agniveer, or it was in the 1930s color service and scheme, or thereafter the 15-year pensionable service scheme, the leadership was always with people who are permanent and pensionable. Therefore, this scheme is not really changing anything. It is only releasing a set of people who are probably not in the right place at the right time as far as the Indian Army is concerned, to get promoted and become leaders of sections and thereafter. Am I right, sir?
Yeah, actually, if I may also make a point here, basically, the problem that arises is just this, that when you send people prematurely home without a pension, they certainly have a problem. More so if they are married and they have children also. Because then, and it's not easy in our environment to find a job. It was much more difficult earlier, and the land holdings in the agriculture sector in the rural areas are becoming so small that the families cannot sustain now on the piece of land that they have. Therefore, that requirement will continue to be. To do that, they have given a benefit which is a fairly good benefit, because I have had experience of people, somebody who wanted to get enrolled in my regiment, and when I told him, would you go to Agnipath? He said, yes, I will send my son. And his reason was that all expenses met, his salary is totally safe, he will get over 22 lakhs in the 4 years that he serves, and 22 lakhs is a good sum with which I will settle him.
Excellent.
So therefore the point is that confidence is in the family. That doesn't matter, he is not getting pension, but there is something being given, big chunk, in order as a help to settle the guy. So that is there. One can always debate. Let me put it this way to you, that few things, all the things are never static. Over a period of time, if it's felt 4 years should be made 5 years or 6 years, it would happen, is my belief. Second, if it is felt 22 lakhs needs to be increased to 25 or 30, it will happen. Because nobody would want that a problem should sustain and be a cause of unrest in the country.
Absolutely, sir. And just to add to what you said, as far as these Agniveers, when they come out, their employability is being looked at by a skills certificate. They would also get exposure to certain skills which would be in demand in the private sector or in the government sector. And of course, the lateral induction into paramilitary, into state and central governments and the private sector also would ensure that they are not left as high and dry as people imagine they will be.
You are very right, Sudarshan. In fact, I'd like to add one more small point, if you would permit me. You see, previously, there used to be a lot of talk. Okay, this is a trained manpower and the paramilitary or the police forces should use. But nobody listened. Nobody did. The reason is, we only talked. We do not make a regimented or laid down rule or law applicable and enforceable, which is happening today. You see the number of things that have happened in recent. I'm not holding any brief for anybody, but the fact of life that a lot of things which earlier were not being tackled are now getting a look, and some kind of a permanency is being given. If similar attitude is taken that it is not left to the whim and fancy of those people, but they are told you will absorb that number, you select the people you like, you have no option, then I'm afraid things will happen.
Absolutely, sir. Sir, do you think there should be some tweaks at the moment, or you, like you suggested, as we go along and as we keep learning from the experience of the first batch, the second batch, and subsequent batches, we will learn from that experience and move on?
Sudarshan, my feel is that you do not meddle with a scheme within 3 to 4 to 5 years. Where you do so, that your thinking ab initio was not mature. And I don't think anybody would like to admit this in any case. Therefore, give it time. Our problem is we jump to conclusions too soon, and we jump to many strong conclusions too soon, if I may put it this way. My feel is, let people who are doing a job, let them do. Let us not distrust to the extent that we do. Let us not find faults with what they have okayed with the services. If there is a problem, country belongs to all of us, as much to them as to us. They will take remedial measures and things will be duly modified as required.
Absolutely, sir. General Bakshi, sir, thank you so much for having sat with me for this time. And my dear friends, on behalf of each of you, thank you so much, sir.
My pleasure.
This has been a great learning, not just for all our viewers, but for me in person. Because this concept of color service, this concept of 7 plus 8 years was something I personally did not know. Because I always assumed 15 years to hamesha raha hai. Now when you look back and think, yes, whatever objections people made out, those objections may well have been well intentioned. However, they were far too premature and far too violent or dramatic or drastic or whatever language you like best, without really understanding the entire scheme. Thank you very much, and for you, my dear friends, as always, continue to view, comment and like the videos, and Chats will always keep simplifying newer and more complex issues. Thank you very much. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Sudarshan.